President Lee is in Malaysia for the ASEAN summit, where he also met with the Cambodian Prime Minister today. Meanwhile, the APEC Economic Leaders Week kicked off today in Gyeongju as South Korea gears up to host a series of highly anticipated meetings. After U.S. President Donald Trump described North Korea as sort of a nuclear power, the South Korean government responded by saying that it's closely working with the United States on their shared goal of denuclearization. South Korean stocks continue to rally, with the benchmark KOSPI climbing above the 4,000 mark for the first time this morning. Shares of Samsung Electronics also hit a milestone, now trading above 100,000 Korean won, or around $70 US. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. We begin in Malaysia, where South Korean President Lee is attending his first ASEAN summit since taking office. For more, our presidential office correspondent Song Yujin, who is traveling with the president, joins us live from Kuala Lumpur. Yujin, what's the latest?
Good afternoon, Eunji. President Lee is currently attending the ASEAN Plus 3 summit, which brings together South Korea, Japan, and China, and of course, the ASEAN members. Now, before that, the president took part in the South Korea ASEAN summit, where he laid out South Korea's vision to further deepen the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, or CSP, which is ASEAN's highest level of partnership established with Seoul last year. Now, this vision is based on the acronym CSP, standing for Contributor for the Dreams and Hope, Springboard for Growth and Innovation, and Partner for Peace and Stability.
한 아세안 연간 상호방문 1,500만 명 시대를 열고 사람 중심의 아세안 공동체 형성에 기여하겠습니다. 한 아세안 간 연간 교역액 3천억 불 달성을 향해 나아가겠습니다. 초국가 범죄, 해양 안보, 재난재해 등 영내 평화와 안정 수요에 보다 적극적으로 부응함으로써 회복력 있는 공동체 형성에 협력 기반을 확대하겠습니다.
Now, for a bit of a context, last year there were just over 12 million mutual visits, while trade volume stood at $192.8 billion US. The president also announced South Korea's plan to host a commemorative summit with ASEAN in 2029, marking 40 years of their partnership.
Right, and Yujin, we also know that President Lee is holding one-on-one meetings with leaders of ASEAN countries on the sidelines of the summit, right?
You're definitely right, Eunji. So President Lee began his second and last day here in Malaysia with a bilateral meeting with Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet. Now, while the two leaders also discussed strengthening their strategic partnership, much of the focus was on joint efforts to combat online scam crimes, an issue that has been raising big concern here in South Korea after a college student was believed to have been lured by a scam gang, and also the repatriation of dozens of Korean nationals allegedly involved in similar crimes. So President Lee expressed appreciation for Phnom Penh's cooperation when Seoul's joint government response team visited recently to discuss the matter.
우리 대한민국에서는 현재 이 스캠 범죄 때문에 우리 국민들 전체가 매우 예민한 상태인데 우리 캄보디아 당국이 대한민국 국민들에 대해서 각별한 배려를 해주신 점 진심으로 감사드립니다.
And the recent unfortunate development that involved one of Korean students that passed away in Cambodia. I would like to offer condolences for this unfortunate incident.
The Cambodian Prime Minister said his government's top priority is dealing with cross-border crimes, including online scams, drug trafficking, and human trafficking, and he also called for broader multinational cooperation. Now, before heading back to Seoul this afternoon, the president will hold a meeting with Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Eunji.
I see. All right, Yujin, thank you for that report. Do keep us updated. And also on the first day of his trip to Kuala Lumpur, President Lee also vowed institutional reform to ensure Koreans living abroad can exercise their right to vote without any inconvenience. He made the comments on Sunday local time while meeting the Korean community in Malaysia. The promise aligns with an earlier pledge to improve the overseas voting system. He also promised to make a country that overseas Koreans can be proud of. Meanwhile, on trade talks between South Korea and the United States, President Eizong says the two countries remain stuck on major details of negotiations. In an interview with Bloomberg ahead of a meeting with his American counterpart Donald Trump this week, he said all the details remain sticking points, including the method of investment, the amount, and the timeline. He added that the United States will try to maximize its interests, but must not create catastrophic consequences for South Korea. The allies have been struggling to narrow key differences over the deal, including Trump's demand that Seoul make a $350 billion investment upfront in return for lower tariffs. And in other news, South Korea's top office said the government will work closely with the United States on their shared goal of denuclearization after President Donald Trump referred to North Korea as sort of a nuclear power. Meanwhile, North Korea sent its top diplomat to Russia and Belarus, a move that could possibly make talks between the United States and North Korea less likely. Our Moon Ji-young reports.
Following U.S. President Donald Trump's remarks referring to North Korea as sort of a nuclear power, a South Korean presidential official said on Sunday that Trump appeared to recognize the advanced reality of North Korea's nuclear capabilities rather than officially recognizing its status or abandoning nuclearization goals. They also reaffirmed close coordination with the U.S. on denuclearization. Trump made the remarks during a press meeting aboard Air Force One on Friday in response to a question about Pyongyang's stance that recognition as a nuclear power is a prerequisite for talks with Washington. He departed for an Asia tour over the weekend, which includes a visit to South Korea, and expressed a strong desire to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, I do. I mean, if you want to put out the word, I'm open to it. You know, they don't have a lot of telephone service. They have a lot of nuclear weapons, but not a lot of telephone service. So I'm open to it. I had a great relationship with him, and he probably knows I'm coming, right?
However, prospects of a U.S.-North Korea meeting seem to have dimmed as North Korean Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee departed Pyongyang for a trip to Russia and Belarus. According to the North State media, the Korean Central News Agency on Monday, Choi's visit to the two countries is at the invitation of their foreign ministers. Her absence during the run-up to Trump's visit to South Korea suggests that talks between Kim and Trump are unlikely to materialize. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
Top U.S. and Chinese economic officials agreed on a framework for a new trade agreement ahead of a highly anticipated meeting between their two leaders. The framework trade deal potentially avoids an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods into the United States. Our Eizong has more.
Top U.S. and Chinese economic officials have agreed on the framework of a new trade agreement, signaling progress ahead of a highly anticipated meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping later this week. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jameson Greer met with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and top negotiator Li Chenggang on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur on Sunday, marking the fifth round of in-person discussions since May. Speaking to ABC News on the same day, Bessent said the two sides averted further tariffs thanks to the maximum leverage provided by Trump.
The president had given me maximum leverage when he threatened 100% tariffs if the Chinese imposed their rare earth global export controls. So I think we have averted that so that the tariffs will be averted.
Bessent said a substantial framework was put in place for the two leaders, adding that China has agreed to delay its expanded licensing regime for rare earth exports by 1 year, a move seen as a concession to ease trade tensions. He also said that China has agreed on substantial agriculture purchases for U.S. farmers. Meanwhile, President Trump arrived in Malaysia on Sunday for the ASEAN summit. his first stop on a 5-day Asia tour that will culminate his face-to-face meeting with Xi in South Korea on Thursday. Both sides are hoping to defuse mounting trade tensions following months of tariff threats and countermeasures. The new framework, if finalized, could mark a turning point in the trade dispute, with officials emphasizing cooperation over confrontation as they prepare for the leaders' summit later this week. 이승재, Arirang News.
South Korea's benchmark KOSPI surpassed the 4,000 mark for the first time today, driven by expectations over a U.S.-China trade deal and gains on Wall Street. The index opened strong before hitting a new intraday record high of 4,038.39. The milestone comes just 4 months after the KOSPI first broke the 3,000 points barrier. Samsung Electronics also made history on the same day as its share price broke 100,000 won for the first time, pushing its market cap to 597 trillion Korean won, or about 417 billion US dollars. The surge is attributed to a recovery in the semiconductor industry and resurgent competitiveness in high-bandwidth memory. The defense chiefs of South Korea and the United States will meet in Seoul early next month for their annual security talks. Seoul's defense ministry said Monday that Minister An Kyu-baek and U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will hold a 57th Security Consultative meeting on November 4th, marking their first in-person talks. The two are expected to discuss policy coordination on North Korea, the allies' combined defense posture, and extended deterrence measures. Naval maintenance and repair cooperation will also be on the agenda. The ministry added that both sides aim to strengthen their alliance in a future-oriented and mutually beneficial way to address evolving regional threats and security challenges. Now, shifting gears, South Korea's National Assembly convened on the weekend in a rare show of bipartisan cooperation to pass bills spanning healthcare, welfare, education, and environmental reform. Our political correspondent Moon Hye-ryun has the details.
The National Assembly held a rare weekend plenary session on Sunday, passing a total of 76 bills aimed at improving citizens' welfare and addressing key social issues.
I believe that holding a plenary session on Sunday with bipartisan agreement is very meaningful, as it demonstrates both parties' commitment to passing livelihood-related bills.
Among the most notable legislation is a bill designed to prevent gaps in emergency room care by improving patient triage and establishing direct communication channels between emergency medical institutions and transport providers. Other bills passed during the session cover a wide range of social and public welfare issues. Amendments to the Child Welfare Act now allow foster parents to exercise legal authority over financial accounts for the children in their care. A new law also prohibits sex offenders from operating or working in accommodation serving foreign nationals. In addition, lawmakers passed legislation establishing lifelong education programs for people with disabilities to promote independent living and social participation. Bills were also approved to support the stable supply of essential medicines, ensure interest relief on student loans, and provide compensation support for victims of digital sex crimes during criminal proceedings. Financial and administrative reforms were included as well. Local governments will now be able to issue bonds in response to unforeseen urgent financial needs. The creation of the National Assembly Records Office was authorized to manage official parliamentary documents. Environmental accountability was strengthened through enhanced procedures for greenhouse gas reduction plans aimed at achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. During the session, lawmakers also formally reported a notion for a parliamentary investigation into last year's Jeju Air plane crash at Muan Airport, signaling continued oversight of government affairs. Political observers say the session reflects growing pressure on lawmakers to focus on public welfare amid ongoing partisan disputes. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In Kuala Lumpur on Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump co-signed a ceasefire deal between Thailand and Cambodia in Washington's strongest diplomatic push in the region this year. The truce, signed on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit, formalizes an earlier July agreement that halted 5 days of border fighting that killed dozens and displaced thousands. Its first phase includes the release of captured soldiers, the removal of landmines, and international troop monitoring along the frontier. Alongside the peace pact, Washington announced trade deals with Malaysia and Cambodia and an MOU on critical minerals and supply chain resilience with Thailand. U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 10% tariff increase on imports from Canada on Saturday after a political spat over an advertisement sponsored by the Ontario government, which quotes former U.S. President Ronald Reagan. The ad, which included part of an address made by Reagan in 1987, where he said tariffs hurt every American, was described by Trump as a fraud. Trump also criticized Canadian officials for failing to withdraw the ad before World Series matches between Canada's Toronto Blue Jays and the U.S. team, the LA Dodgers. Canada is currently the only G7 country without a fresh deal under Washington's tariff regime, which already includes levies of 35% on goods, 50% on metals, and 25% on automobiles. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce urged both sides to resolve the dispute through diplomacy, warning that escalating tariffs would hurt North American competitiveness. In Moscow on Sunday, Russia announced a successful test of its nuclear-powered Burevestnik cruise missile. Russian officials say the missile, known by NATO as Skyfall, flew for 15 hours and covered about 14,000 kilometers, demonstrating its ability to evade missile defenses. The Kremlin says the weapon, powered by a nuclear engine, could soon be deployed as part of its strategic arsenal, calling it a system no one else in the world has. The test came just hours after Russia launched one of its deadliest air assaults on Ukraine in weeks. More than 100 drones and missiles struck residential areas in Kiev, killing at least 3 civilians and injuring dozens. Ukrainian officials said Russia has unleashed nearly 1,200 drones and 50 missiles in the past week alone. In Paris on Saturday, police arrested 2 suspects over the recent jewelry heist at the Louvre Museum, one of the boldest art thefts in French history. Authorities say one suspect was detained at Charles de Gaulle Airport as he prepared to board a flight out of the country, and another was reportedly planning to travel to Mali. They didn't say whether any of the jewelry valued at more than $100 million had been recovered. The arrests come a week after 4 masked thieves used power tools and a ladder truck to break into the museum's Gallery of Apollo in broad daylight. Officials say DNA evidence found at the scene led to the suspect's identification. France's justice minister admitted security protocols had failed, damaging the country's global image. In response, the Louvre has tightened security and transferred its most valuable pieces to the Bank of France's underground vaults. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
An unseasonably harsh cold front has brought early winter conditions back to the peninsula. The season's first cold wave advisories have been issued for the inland areas of central parts of Korea. And furthermore, strong winds advisories are active for parts of Chungcheongnam-do and the west coast of Jeollado provinces. The rest of the country is also dealing with biting cold winds that are driving down temperatures. Tomorrow will be even colder, with Seoul's morning low is forecast to drop down to further 2 degrees Celsius, and this round of severe cold snap will gradually recover to seasonal averages as we head towards the end of the week. This afternoon, daytime highs will remain chilly, only reaching 11 degrees here in the capital. Daegu, Gwangju will be topping out at 13 degrees, but skies will be mostly clear nationwide. Then we can look forward to a return to a late autumn weather at the end of the week, with rain in the forecast on Friday in the capital area and west of Gangwon-do province.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.